You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't.
Hello, listeners. I'm Balaam Usitz, host for this episode of the 15 Minutes Share Your Voice podcast, where we talk with top-notch law firms and attorneys about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing. They deliver tailor-made services to help your firm accomplish its objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and to make sure you're getting the best return on investment, your firm needs to have a better website and better content. Gladiator Law Marketing uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, where you can schedule a free marketing consultation. Today's guest on the podcast is Jennifer Rozelle. Jennifer started as a legal assistant at the Indiana Estate and Elder Law, and now she is an attorney and law firm owner. Jenny and her husband, Justin Schumacher, who is also an attorney, own and manage Indiana Estate and Elder Law together. Jennifer is a member of the Indiana State Bar Association, specifically the Elder Law section and the probate, trust, and real property section. She is also a member of the American Bar Association and the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for doing the show. So tell us a little bit more about Indiana Estate and Elder Law.
Yeah, so we, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit. Indiana State and Elder Law rebranded probably about 3 years ago. We were formerly Hunter Estate and Elder Law, Hunter being the founder's name. But Indiana State and Elder Law, we do estate planning, elder law, and post-death administration. So you think probate, trust administration, that sort of thing. Our main office is in Fishers, Indiana, which is sort of central Indiana, just north of Indianapolis. But we also have 2 satellite offices, one out west in Rockville, Indiana, which is about the cutest little Hallmark Channel looking town, and Wabash, Indiana, which is up north, which is also a really cute, small little town. And then my office, my team is we're nearing 20 members at this point. And I have an awesome team around me. I'm no one without them, and honored to work with my team every single day.
Great. Now, it sounds like you started at this firm, maybe in its former embodiment, as a law clerk, and now you own and run the place.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about sort of that journey.
Yeah, so I'm even going to I don't even know what word to use, but law clerk is maybe a little bit more fancy of a role than I even was. I was the kind of receptionist. For a long time, my business card was blank because the founder trusted me to do a lot of little things. And so I started in January of 2012, and I'm one of those weirdos that knew I wanted to be a lawyer since I was in 2nd grade, though I was smart enough after undergrad, after college, that I was like, well, being a lawyer is also a financial investment, not just an educational endeavor. So Jenny, how about you think about making sure that that's what you want to do? And so I started at this firm shortly after undergrad with the sole purpose or kind of sole motivation maybe of just confirming that law was my future. And I jokingly tell people I just never left from there. I worked my way up. I went to law school. I worked full time while going to law school. Met my husband in law school. And then shortly after passing the bar, the founder was ready to retire. And it was kind of just how the dominoes fell, so to speak. So I have a really cool path that gives me a really unique perspective in running the business now, because I've sat in every single person's seat and I understand their day-to-day and their workload.
Yeah, excellent. Well, what a great story. So you said you knew you wanted to be an attorney. What was the impetus for that?
I have no idea. I think that, when I was talk about in second grade, the fact that I even, spouted that off is kind of hilarious. And then I think that, I have a lot of people say, oh, my kid they need to go to law school because they argue with me left and right. And, they make it like a joking thing. And I was totally that kid. I was always the one to pipe up and say something. You can ask my poor parents. But what's funny is, now that life has played out, I don't do anything, ultimately in like a courtroom. I don't do any kind of fighting stuff. So I think it just kind of worked out exactly how maybe it was supposed to, because my personality lends itself to more of a kind of people and talking rather than like duking it out in the courtroom. So yeah, there was no like weird motivation in my second grade class. I probably read it in a book or something and was like, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's someone listening to this podcast who is either thinking about becoming an attorney or maybe is in law school, or maybe is a brand new attorney in a large firm, what sort of words of advice would you have for them?
That is a wonderful question. And I think the way I'm going to respond comes from a place of just being something that's very top of mind for me right now. So right now we're actually interviewing for another attorney position. And something I keep hearing from these attorneys is they want partnership track. They want partnership track. And so it's very top of mind for me to, because it's something I keep talking about in interviews, that I think that, life has a way of like structuring itself to say like, you must follow these things. Like you must go to college, and then you must go to law school, and then you must, get married, and you must have a family. And I think my words of wisdom would be that that doesn't have to be the way things work out. I took several years off between undergrad and law school. And I think that just stopping themselves and just kind of pausing to kind of look around and say, like, what do I really want? And what everyone else wants around you may not be what you want, and that's okay. I've hired attorneys. I actually have an attorney right now that said, Jenny, I want nothing to do with the partnership track ever. Like, I don't want to have that responsibility. I want to be able to do my job, go home, and not carry anything, beyond that. And I give her kudos for that, just to have that wherewithal to say, like, I'm not going to follow what everyone else is saying and doing.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. Oftentimes I think about trying to figure out what you want to do in life is really a journey of discovery. It's not sort of, branded in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And oftentimes it changes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, what is right for you today and what you want to do today may be different than what it will be 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And having that open mind and that flexibility, I think, is really important. That's a great point you made. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And I think I'm kind of like the example of that. I just kind of, I went through my path at my pace and what I wanted to do and what was smart for me at every step of the way. And I mean, I'm doing pretty well. Now I own a law firm. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a cool story, but it's also a great example of what I just said as well.
Yeah, perfect. So let's get back to the law firm for a second. So what is estate and elder law?
Yeah, yeah. I actually think that estate is a lot of people understand what that is. That, when you talk about planning for incapacity or planning for after we pass away and getting those very, important and sometimes basic even estate planning documents in order. So that's always really easy for me to explain. It's the elder law side that people sometimes scratch their head at, like, what even is that? And actually, I have a lot of clients that will come out of my conference room because there's a big, like our big signage, logo behind the front desk that says Indiana Estate and Elder Law. And a lot of times clients will see that and they'll say, Jenny, what is elder law? Is it just helping old people like me? And we always have a good laugh. But at the end of the day, elder law, really what most elder law attorneys do is help clients navigate how to plan for and pay for long-term care. And it's a huge issue. It's a really expensive venture to go down later in life. And the sooner you start planning for the possibility of long-term care in the future, the better you're going to be. So the elder law side is really, a lot of something I picked up on is most elder law attorneys do estate planning, but most estate planning attorneys don't do elder law. And elder law is it's really in conjunction with estate planning, just with that little, dash of there's this whole beast called long-term care that we have to talk about too.
Got it.
Yeah.
So are these, I imagine there's all sorts of rules and regulations for what you can do, what you can't do, and how all this stuff works. Does that vary state to state? Are those regulations at the federal level or are they at the state level?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. So most of the state law driven things you'll find in estate planning. So every state operates just ever so slightly differently in just how we interpret different situations. However, in elder law, like I said, the big thing in elder law is planning for long-term care. And what that's code for is I have to understand Medicaid law, not Medicare, Medicaid law, which is a federal program. But states interpret the federal program guidelines differently based on cost of living. Like here in Indiana, our cost of living is very different than California. And so there's a little, specifically in the elder law side of the practice, there is a lot of that federal law driven stuff in that side. But in more of the estate side, it is more state law driven. So yeah, and that's how it is with, of course, with a lot of practice areas that every state just does things a little differently.
Yeah. So let's get an example. Let's say I called you up and I said, "Hey, Jennifer, I'm 60 years old. I have a house that's paid off. I get a pension from my employer of this much a month. I have no other debt." So what would that conversation be like? What questions would you ask? Kind of what topics would we talk about?
Yeah. So my office is lucky that we are able to offer a free initial consultation to, individuals and families in Indiana. So, when people initially call and say things like that, my team is encouraged to just get them in for that initial meeting, that initial consultation, because every single person not only has a different setup, familial setup, but they have vastly different assets, vastly different goals. And so in that initial meeting, I jokingly call it a blind date. It's who are you? Who am I? What are we doing here? And then once we figure out what we're doing here, are we going on a second date? Are we going through, my process that my office has? And so one of my favorite sayings in the world is you don't know what you don't know. And you shouldn't be expected to know what you don't know. And that's a lot of that first meeting is educating individuals on what their options are and how those options apply to their family, their assets, their goals.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now you were talking about Medicaid earlier. And at least in New York State, we've gone through this with my in-laws and my parents. So there is this sort of amount of assets that your assets have to be below a certain number before Medicaid will kick in and sort of take over your long-term care.
Yeah.
And so how do we sort of manage that? What are the different types of things that you do with your clients to sort of help manage that process?
Yeah, it really primarily depends on what point in the process that person is in. So if they're coming from a truly a pre-planning standpoint, there are strategies that we can implement through like irrevocable trusts that basically protect your assets from Medicaid long-term care down the road. So the way I explain it to clients is you kind of put your assets in this treasure chest in this safe, and you're the only one that has the key to it. Medicaid doesn't have the key to it. So from a pre-planning strategy, if I have time to work with, like, the person's not on the doorstep of a nursing home, for example, that's, something I'm talking to clients about. That is the exact kind of trust I have set up for my own parents. Um, However, conversely, if you think of a client that is on, maybe, it's a married couple and husband is on, is in rehab, they fell. That's always a big thing. They fall, they broke a hip, they go into rehab, and then they're told, your husband is not coming home. He cannot come home safely. And so a lot of people get really confused on Medicare and Medicaid. And Medicare will cover rehab for a certain period of time, and you have to constantly show improvement. But then ultimately, that rug gets ripped out from under you. And if you haven't done any pre planning, then you are tasked with, okay, am I going to pay that bill? That's probably, a nursing home in Indiana. I can't even imagine in New York. In Indiana, it's usually 8, 9, 10,000 a month per person. That's expensive. That's really expensive. And a lot of people can't afford that for a long time. And so there are even strategies in like the 11th hour like that we can explore, see if those make sense. Sometimes they don't make sense. But what I would encourage individuals and families in that kind of situation is to seek an elder law attorney's advice. Don't go to an estate planning attorney. Find someone that has that elder law expertise to help you figure out what your options are and whether any of those options make the best sense.
Yeah, yeah, very good. So I think with some of those elder law issues in Medicaid, there's some lead times or some waiting periods, right? You just can't throw the switch right away. So there's a certain period
Yeah.
of time that you have to set certain things up. Does
Yeah.
that vary state to state, or is that pretty uniform?
It does. Like Indiana's 5 years. I know there's some states that are 3 years. I have some family up north in Minnesota. They're 7 years. So it does vary by state, but it's not, I don't know a single state that's like below 3 years.
Yeah.
So ideally, best case scenario, you are doing pre-planning. That's going to be the best case scenario. That's exactly why I have my own parents set up in this pre-planning strategy, because I see the value in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is that, it's called a look back period. There is that look back period that we have to be mindful of. But even if we're below that, there are sometimes still options on the table. They're just not going to be the prettiest options.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So it seems to me, I've seen some advertising for elder law attorneys. It may not be a crowded space as personal injury law lawyers, but certainly there's other competition out there. So if I was considering contacting an elder law attorney, what are things that I should look for?
Yeah, I think that's I only am smiling. I know in the podcast you won't be able to see me smiling, but I'm only smiling because I think a lot of people think, elder law attorneys are like, competitive or adversarial with each other. And oftentimes there's not a lot of elder law attorneys in an area. And so it's actually quite the opposite, that we are, at least I can speak for here in Indiana, we're a pretty tight community. Like if I get, conflicted out, like I'm going to tell my client to go see one of them. Kind of going back to the whole blind date thing. I am such an advocate for an attorney-client relationship should be two ways. I should want to work with you, and you should want to work with me. If we don't like this relationship, it's going to be like beating our heads against a wall. if we don't communicate well together, if we don't communicate in the same manner, frequently enough. Oftentimes, unfortunately, though, when an elder law attorney gets involved, it is panic. It is 11th hour, and we don't have time to even even me saying go interview some and see which one you like the best. A lot of times families don't have that time. And so what I would say is just find someone that's an elder law attorney and look specifically for that, uh, practice area or designation. Most elder law attorney, I heard this once and I don't remember who said it. And I feel so bad because I steal this line all the time. The elder law attorneys are like or like social workers with law degrees. Most of us are like bleeding hearts. We're good people. It's just you will be hard pressed to find an elder law attorney you don't enjoy.
Oh, well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
it's a good observation, and it's good, and it's good news to those of us listening to this. So let me ask you another question. So you've gone from being an attorney at a law firm to now running the law firm. What are this? If there's lawyers listening to this, and yeah, you were talking earlier about everyone wants to be on the partner track. Well, not a lot of people want to be on the partner track, and they want to make partner, and they understand everything that comes with that. But you're even beyond that. You own the thing. So it's like hanging out your own shingle, right? So there's this notion of I can go work for a firm and become a partner, or I could go start my own firm. Do you have thoughts on those two paths?
I think that would probably be a really interesting podcast episode all of in itself. And I would almost love to hear someone's feedback that has done it the other way, because there's kind of two different schools of thought. When my husband and I took over the practice, we purchased it from the founder. And so that was about 5 years or so ago. So we had to take on a business loan. And
Sure.
sometimes people, that would sometimes, kind of weird or freak people out to carry a business loan like that. But we also bought an already established firm with the phones already ringing, plenty. We got processes, we got systems. But the other side of that coin is hanging your own shingle, which just, you don't carry the business loan debt, but you carry just very different challenges that I just can't speak to. I don't know what that's like because I only can, share my experience. I want to say I wouldn't do it any other way, but I've not done it the other way either. So, if you have a listener that's really, kind of stuck in between those two, I would encourage them to find someone that has been in not both shoes, because no one's ever going to
Yeah.
be in both shoes, but someone on each side. And maybe, I have law students and, recent law grads that will contact me just to kind of interview me, pick my brain. Do that. Pick someone's brain on both sides of the coin, and I think you'll learn eventually what maybe you're most comfortable with.
Yeah. So did you and your husband always want to own a firm and run a firm, or was it just that this opportunity presented itself and you guys looked at each other and said, you know what, let's do this?
The latter, it was that. So my husband actually wasn't at the firm at the time. So we have such a wild story. So like I said, I've been here for about 12 years. And when the founder wanted to retire, my husband wasn't at the practice. She looked at me and was like, "You want to buy this thing?" And my husband and I were very recently married, like newlyweds. And I come home and I'm like, "So, do you want to buy the law?" And he was doing HOA law, which I can't imagine doing that. And he was like, "Yes, where do I sign?" Because he wasn't passionate about the field he was in. So it was just that the opportunity presented itself. I mean, of course, I had a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this place already.
Yeah.
But then when the opportunity did present itself, we looked at each other and we were like, "We got to make this work," and we did.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's start wrapping this up. So where can our listeners go to find out more about your law firm?
Yeah, I have an awesome website. IndianaStateElderLaw.com. I'm amazed the number of attorneys and law firms that I look up and don't have a website. That's the reason I'm kind of giggling right now. So encourage attorneys to get their tushes and gear on getting websites established. IndianaStateElderLaw.com. And we're on like every social media channel as well. So Facebook, Instagram. I guess we're not on TikTok, but I'm sure my marketing person is only a matter of time before she shoves me into that land.
All right. So, Jennifer, is there something that I've not asked you that you would like to share with our audience?
I don't think so. I really enjoyed, and like I shared with you prior to recording, my big message that I wanted people to take away is that, I took a very non-traditional path to where I am, and that's okay. And that was what I really wanted to kind of hammer home is everyone's path is different and every path is just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Those are great closing thoughts. Jennifer, thank you very much for being a wonderful guest on the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe and we'll see you next time.